Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents are.
You told the story.
And I will, and I'll
I'm not trying to ambush you. As I said at the start, Nick, to be clear.
No, it's not an ambush,
Nick,
but
to be clear,
I think
I'm not ambushing you.
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is a sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father didn't eat an Olive Garden because he said, that's not real Italian food. Hang on, can I... What's with the interruptions? Can I...
This is where you talk about Jews, women, and blacks. Let's just take a listen.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it fucking isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Okay. Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
That's all true. That's 100% true. Everything I said in that clip is true. I think anybody would tell you that more black people, proportionally, commit violent crime than white people, and people vote with their feet. People would rather pay a much higher property tax.
Most mass shootings.
What's with the interruptions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
I mean, it couldn't be clearer, really, unless you want to say that's another of your jokes. But you're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist.
Earlier in the interview, you got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically sure
my father's...
He's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to the everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist. You're right. So maybe everybody... The difference is you're attacking my father. You know, he could get fired from his job.
I'm not attacking your father.
You are.
No, I'm not. I don't know your father. And to be clear, I have no knowledge about him at all other...
Well, then let's leave him out of it. Let's leave him out of it if you don't know.
2/3 of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's the question.
I've just told you. It's 60 or 65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb, or are you just not that smart? So are you playing dumb, or are you actually dumb?
Maybe
it's about proportionality.
Maybe I'm dumb.
You are because you're... Well, I don't think you are dumb. I think you're smart, actually, but you're deliberately avoiding per capita. Keep interrupting me. You're very rude. Are you black? Because you're being very rude by interrupting me right now.
To you.
I'm giving you a hard time, but I do want to finish my point. I do want to finish my point.
Good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Another episode of Jafar Show. Today we got Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan. Quite a debate, if you want to call it a debate, because they were just trying to get Mr. Nick Fuentes in every way. They were attacking him left and right, but guess what? He was up to the task. Oh, yes, absolutely. He was able to get them back. Not only that, he got them with a TKO. Let's get to it.
You're a New York Times reader, an NPR fan, a Daily Wire subscriber, or an avid consumer of all things Tucker Carlson. For several months now, there's been no avoiding the subject of Nick Fuentes.
Tucker Carlson, actually, that was the interview that got a lot of fame, Mr. Nick Fuentes. And apparently, they keep doing you service with another great interview. Good job. Keep going. Get more famous. I believe they're just jealous that you are young and fabulous. Yes, you do have some views that need major adjustment. We're going to talk about it. But still, you did great, Mr. Nick. Mr. Piers, all I can tell you is try harder. Interview that Nick Fuentes did with Carlson Tucker got him a lot of fame, made him known even more. They were trying to cancel him in so many platforms. This guy has millions of followers. They don't know what to do with him. So we'll talk about it more in details.
And let's be clear, the main reason you're hearing about him is because he's popular. A large number of people, especially young men, are interested in what he has to say. What that says about our society and our culture is the subject of ferocious debate. For many people, it's a grave indictment of an insidious immorality. For others, he's a product of a culture which has turned on its own and left many young people feeling listless and bitter. He's either a litmus test for right-wing hypocrisy on free.
Look at his introduction, just from negative to negative. Nothing positive about him. Is he this? Is he that? Is he product of this? Is he product of that? Like Nick Fuentes is coming from a different planet. No, he's a product of us. He's a product of this society. He's a product of the American society.
Speech or a walking, talking manifestation of where the line should be drawn. And a frankly preposterous amount of airtime has been spent on debating everything from his ideology to his sexuality and whether anyone should actually talk to him at all.
If I were writing a glossary entry on the Streisand effect, I wouldn't put a picture of her next to it. I would put a picture of Nick Fuentes.
They have opted to not do so when it comes to Nazis like Nick Fuentes.
Fuentes takes this guy apart brick by brick. It's a full takedown.
My concern is that people who are a bit more moderate are deeply alarmed by Nick Fuentes.
I was very happy to see that, like, Nick Fuentes really passed that test with flying colors.
That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes.
That's the war. Can you get the beef prices down? Not crazy things that Nick Fuentes or these other loons say on social media.
Well, it looks like all the screaming about Nick Fuentes on the internet is finally dying down a little bit.
So now we had on this guy, this Fuentes guy, and never challenged him.
You should have Nick Fuentes on your show and you could ask him questions about that.
The truth is, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend all this time talking about Nick Fuentes, but not actually to Nick Fuentes.
Finally, because they spent so many debates, so many panels just talking about him, and they never wanted to give him a chance. They're like, hey, if we give him a chance, he's going to get bigger and bigger. Well, guess what? Yes, that's true, and that's exactly what happened.
People who say you shouldn't give him a platform overlook the very obvious fact that he already has a platform of his own, which is often bigger than most of the people complaining.
I will add combined. His platform is huge.
And he uses it to speak unchallenged to his many followers. It's on that basis that I've invited him to appear live and uncensored on my platform. And Nick Fuentes joins me now. Nick Fuentes, welcome to Uncensored.
Hi, great to be with you.
I don't know you. I don't think we've ever met. You can correct me if that's wrong. I know about you.
So first they brought him the gentleman talking all bad things about him. So Nick Fuentes, what he's going to say, hey, you need to see who's the employer. If you go back to his employing, that guy is actually a pro-Israeli. So that's why they're actually attacking him, because he is, according to them, an anti-Semite, which he's going to deny, of course. But of course, he has a position against the state of Israel on the atrocity they're doing right now in Gaza.
I know that increasingly people are talking about you in a more mainstream environment than you may be used to. So for those who know nothing about Nick Fuentes, I want this to be an opportunity to get to the real person. I don't know who that person is, but I do want to use this opportunity to get there. I've seen you talk, as we prepared for this, in exchanges with people and on your show, saying if you fear it's going to be very hostile, it's going to be an ambush, all those kind of things. I don't intend it to be overtly hostile. I don't intend to ambush you. I intend it to be an examination of what you said on the record, an examination of what you believe or what you say you believe, and an examination of what your rising popularity says about the state of the conservative movement in America. So those are my goals from this interview. What are your goals? Why are you doing it?
I thought it'd be interesting. And, you know, you've talked a lot about me on your show over the years, and this is the first time you actually extended the invitation. I think it might be the second, actually. I think we talked about doing it during A24 a few years ago, but you've talked a lot about me with the panel, and now you've extended the invitation to talk to me. And I think it'd be interesting for me to maybe clarify some positions and maybe get to know you a little better as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
There is a belief that you have two personas. There's one that you roll out now for podcasts and for shows like mine, where you come across as reasonable. And then there's your show on Rumble, where you often come across as having, you know, a very unreasonable view on things. This is what Coleman Hughes said about you.
Nick Fuentes knows exactly what he's doing. He is consciously playing this double game as part of a long-term strategy to become popular enough to take the reins of power, at which point he plans to pivot towards the extreme and unpopular policies that he advocates daily on Rumble.
So first of all, what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I would say that Coleman Hughes is a propagandist. He works for the Free Press, which is run by Barry Weiss. So I think you have to consider the source. And Barry Weiss is a pro-Israel partisan. Free Press is just bought out by CBS for $150 million.
So this is the first punch. There we go. It's like, look at this gentleman is saying about you. You need to check resources. Where is he coming from? Who is employing him?
Larry Ellison or his son David Ellison. And so I think that's coming from a particular point of view. We can't pretend like that's coming from a vacuum or from some fixed position. That's coming from a propaganda outlet that's in favor of Israel. That's first. But second, I would say he is right about the two personas. And I think that everybody understands this on some level. On my show, I make jokes and I use rhetoric and I'm hyperbolic because for a long time I had an audience that was small on these like dissident platforms. I was on D Live for many years. A lot of people don't even know what that is. And so I had a small
I don't. Do you know what D Live is?
following, and we had sort of like an in-group sense of humor and memes and things like that. And you talk about it one way on a freewheeling live stream when I'm by myself and I'm ranting and we make jokes and we play devil's advocate. We play with different positions. But then when you sit down in an interview like this one and people ask me a good faith question, what do you actually believe? Well, then I clarify and I say, well, here I'm not joking. Here I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being rhetorical. I'll tell you precisely what I believe. As far as this idea that
I mean, think about it. We all have different personalities and with different people. If you're gonna meet the CEO of your company, it's not the same as you're gonna meet your friend that you go and have fun with. So it's totally different. The way you talk to your parents is not the way you talk to your friends. So it's totally understood the way also you talk to certain media. But we have to pay attention here because some figures actually, they will be talking so nice in the left, for example, then they go to the right and they're very strict, very conservative. So they kind of go with the flow. They kind of change their position. And that's what Mr. Nick Fuentes is saying. He's like, I'm not changing my views. And you can actually see it coming. That's going to be the most interesting thing. That's where Mr. Nick Fuentes is really going to thrive. Piers Morgan is going to ask him a few questions. He's expecting that Nick Fuentes is going to deny them. But Nick Fuentes did the unthinkable. He's like, yes, you think I'm racist? Yes, I'm racist. You think I said that about women? Yes, I did say that about women. You think I said that about blacks? Yes, I did say that about. He didn't deny anything. What he did, he explained a little bit about it. And we're going to get to it here in just a minute.
going to get power and then turn into Hitler, that just sounds totally insane to me. I'll be honest. It just sounds insane.
Do you have aspirations for political power?
Not really. I think that
this was a mistake. You should have told him yes. He would have been so much scared. Tell him, yes, I am thinking about political power. Why? That's what everybody's scared of. They're scared of his influence. They're scared of millions of followers. Imagine if these millions go vote. So that's what they are scared of. And when I say they, I'm talking about Mr. Piers Morgan and all those boomers, all that generation that think that they know it all. They think that what they have in their mind is the truth, is the reality. However, this new generation is teaching everybody that, no, we have to be flexible. We have to listen to everybody. Having degrees and having so much credibility in the media, that's the only people who we're going to listen to. Not at all. If you think about it, many great thinkers had no degrees. So we have to listen to everybody. The voice of wisdom can be coming from anybody. You don't have to be certified a wise man to say something wise. What we need to do is listen and filter. Not everything, of course, makes sense. If something does not make sense, and we're going to get to it, for example, he's going to be talking about Hitler is cool. That doesn't make sense, but we're going to talk about it.
If I wanted to run for office, I wouldn't say a lot of the things that I say. I don't know that a lot of people would vote for me. I tend to offend everybody, even a lot of people that like me. So no, I'm a truth teller. I like to tell the truth. I like to do my live stream.
Who is Nick Fuentes? Tell me about your upbringing. I know you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Tell me about your early years.
Or early how? Like my childhood or a little bit later?
Yeah, your childhood, yeah.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in LaGrange Park, as you say. My parents are ethnics. My father's half Mexican, half Irish. My mother's Italian. And they both came from a pretty rough upbringing themselves. They both were raised by single mothers, not because of divorce, but because both of their fathers had died. They endured a lot of dysfunction. And I think that's one of the reasons they came together and they related to each other and they wanted to create a normal upbringing for their children. They wanted to have a normal family life. And so they moved out to LaGrange Park away from the city. And they raised me and my sister and really put us first. I think that's a big reason why I tend to have a lot of these family values or Christian values. My mother quit her job and stayed at home to raise us. And so I have a very close relationship with my parents, with my sister. We're a very tight family. And we grew up in a pretty idyllic town. And maybe we can sort of get into a conversation about politics from this. I loved my upbringing. My mom stayed at home. My dad was working. We're in a...
Guys, listen to this part right here when he's going to say, I love my upbringing, because I believe this is what it's all about, Mr. Nick Fuentes. He loved his upbringing. He loved the way his city used to look. He loved the culture. He loved the hot dogs. He loved the football games. He loved the American culture. What he's seeing right now is like, this is changing. And he does not see the same with all the immigration that's been going on, with all the changes that's been going on. He's going to also mention that 50 years from now, the whites are going to be actually the minority. So these are the changes that he does not agree with. He does not agree with. I don't care what kind of skin you have. For me, as a matter of fact, everybody is the same. But those are kind of also, I can say, tastes. We'll get to that.
Mostly white suburb in Chicago. Everybody was maybe half Catholic, half Protestant. It was a baseball town. I played baseball for many years. In Chicago, we love our hot dogs. We have our baseball parade and get a hot dog. And so I love where I came from. I love the city. It's a working class city. I love the people here. They're very good, humble, down to earth, decent people. And I guess I had my political, not to jump ahead, but this is a big part of where my political awakening came from. I sort of left this bubble, if you could call it that. When I went to college in 2016, I went to Boston University and I read a lot of things online and I realized the country does not look like LaGrange Park. It doesn't look like Western Springs or Hinsdale or Elmhurst. It looks very different.
So that's where the shock actually is, when he moved to the big city. Then he found the reality, what's going on. It's not really the same where he came from. Then he started asking questions. Guys, we need to analyze what is this phenomenon of Mr. Nick Fuentes. And I'm sure that there's not only one, there's many that are coming up. And actually, that's a very positive thing, because we need people to share ideas, exchange ideas, to debate, to convince people. As long as there is no violence, I believe it's the right thing to do. Let's listen to Mr. Nick.
The country's undergoing a radical transformation because of immigration. And so I saw that and I said, this is not really a desirable change. I don't like the south side of Chicago or the west side or LA or certain parts of Boston as much as I like where I came from. And I guess that's what made me an American nationalist. I said, I want to preserve my home and the things that are familiar to me and the things I like about my home, what makes it America. So that's a little bit about my background. I don't know where you want to go with that, but
well,
that's kind of where I came from.
My first obvious question is, were your parents immigrants to the United States, or were their parents, or were their grandparents? In other words, at some stage, I presume there were immigrants in your family who came to the US. Is that correct?
There were. I believe my mother was fourth generation and my father was third.
Mr. Piers Morgan is setting the bait right now. What he's trying to get to is that how come you are from an immigration family and you are complaining about immigration? What Mr. Nick Fuentes is going to try to explain to him is that immigration back then is not the same as immigration right now. Back then, actually, the United States, we were building the country. That's how the country is built, by immigrants. But when we're talking about right now and the illegal immigration that are associated with crimes, then that becomes an issue with immigration right now. So there is a difference here between comparing. And whatever Mr. Nick Fuentes is going to say right now, it's going to be about right now, what's going on right now in America. Many of his critiques are going to come up. We're going to say, well, no, he doesn't have academics. He doesn't have degrees. He doesn't really know what he's talking about as far as historically. Not really. Right now, in a push of the button, everybody can know everything what happened. It's not like before you have to go to the library and do some research. Everything is super simple right now. You just have the will. Do you really want to know or not? So let's listen to Mr. Nick, what he's going to say.
Generation. So their ancestors came here on my mom's side in the 1860s, I believe. The first wave of Italian immigration. My father's ancestors, I think they came around at the turn of the century in 1900.
So your view of immigration, and we'll get to the specifics about your views on immigration, are they not affected at all by the fact that if it wasn't for immigration, you wouldn't exist as an American?
Well, I would certainly exist, but like you said, maybe not as an American. Certainly that's influenced in some measure. But I think that the kind of immigration that we had for a long time in the country, it's different than the immigration that we have now. And let's just say for openers, it's different immigrants. They're coming from a different place with a different culture, a different religion. It's
no matter what he's going to try to punch Mr. Piers Morgan, Nick Fuentes is going to come back with an answer, and a very good answer. So keep trying. This whole interview, I believe, it was not a debate about any kind of ideas, about exchanging of ideology, about solutions, about what's going on in the world. All what it is about you, Nick Fuentes. You said this. Did you really say this? Then he going to keep saying, yes, I did really say it. Did you really say that? Yeah, I really said that. What's next? So they were just trying to attack him as Nick Fuentes. That's what the whole interview is about, I believe. Mr. Piers Morgan dig the grave that he fell into. That's the bottom line.
Not the same as it was. So first, you have a qualitative difference. My ancestors, for the most part, I have 3 European grandparents from Ireland and Italy, 1 from Mexico. They came from Europe. They came from a society where there's a common ancestry, there's a common religion, common civilization. The people that have come in since 65, since Hart-Celler, they're coming from China, India, the Northern Triangle, Mexico, Venezuela. And so first, they're just different people. Secondly, it's a quantitative difference. There's way more, and it's an unceasing, always increasing wave. For the first 3 or 4 waves of immigration, you would have a major influx of immigrants and then it would stop. And then you'd have another wave and then it would stop. This one, it just keeps going up for 35 years and it's too many. So that's really where I would draw the distinction between maybe where I originate from. I would even just simply call that immigration. What this is an invasion. It's a completely different policy.
But you mentioned,
can't even call
all
it
right,
the same
but
thing.
you mentioned Mexico in that list, and your father is.
So look, ladies and gentlemen, he's not going to be debating the immigration issue. He's going to be debating the fact that you are a descendant of an immigrant. And why are you against immigration? That's the whole debate about in this section.
He's half Mexican. So, yeah, I mean, by your criteria, part of the invasion would include your father, presumably, and his immediate descendants who came from Mexico.
Not really true, because when my father's ancestors came here, it was a small fraction of the total immigrants that came from Mexico. I don't believe that we should have 0 immigrants forever, or even 0 immigrants from non-white countries. But you have to draw the distinction. My father's father, he was here in the 40s and 50s. It was his parents, or I believe either his parents or grandparents, that came here even earlier. Up until 1965, 90% of the immigrants were coming from Europe. I have no problem with that. If we have 10% of them coming from Mexico or Latin America, maybe that's reasonable, but that's not what it is now.
So this is where I lose you, Mr. Nick. So he's saying it's okay back then because 90% of them were coming actually from Europe. So he's talking about white people again. This is why many people accuse him of being a white supremacist. And he's going to be clear about it. Yeah, I don't want my children to marry black people. That's how I am. So there are some opinions here that are on the fence. And there are some opinions that I believe that he has a right to, as far as an American, as far as the First Amendment. But also there are some opinions that could be very offensive, and we're going to get to that.
Now you've got 10 million illegals in 4 years under Joe Biden, and you got millions more legal immigrants from China, India, Venezuela.
By the way, guys, the one who deported the most in the history of the U.S. was Mr. Obama, just so you know.
El Salvador, and it's so many with no break for assimilation, and they're all from non-white countries. It's transforming what America is. And again, that's the distinction. That's what makes it unacceptable.
I always believe everybody.
You see here how he's saying non-white country, not acceptable? That's where the red line is. Because if you have a white person, a black person, a brown person, what matters if they have good values, if they work good, if they provide for the society, if they pay for taxes, if there are no crimes? What matters what color of skin they are?
Is a product of their environment, right? I've interviewed thousands of people. Maybe 3, 4, 5,000 people from all different walks of life. But the one common theme I would say is everyone's a product of their environment. And I was reading some stuff about you in the last few days. There was an episode of your podcast where you talked about your father, Bill Fuentes.
This is the low hit. This is when he's going to start attacking now his father. He's going to tell him, well, you said on one of your shows that your father didn't want to take you to the black restaurants like Applebee's. Why is that? That's going to get Mr. Nick angry a little bit, but he's going to know how to recover from it. This is how everybody, when they are asked about you are being a racist, everybody when they're accused about being a racist, oh, you don't like black people. Well, then everybody comes back with the defense. Well, guess what? I have black friends. Oh, guess what? I've been with black people before and I spent time with them, so I have no problem. So people try to justify themselves. And just like Mr. J.D. Vance, for example, this gentleman is into an interracial relationship and they're accusing him of being a racist. How can you be a racist if you fell in love with a different race? He actually already passed that test in the personal level. Mr. J.D. Vance already passed that test of racism. He married somebody from a different race. He has kids with somebody from a different race. How can you accuse somebody like that they could be racist? So let's get back to it, Mr. Nick Fuentes. I believe that Mr. Nick Fuentes is racist. I believe that Nick Fuentes like white people more, but let's think about it. Most white people want to marry white people. Most black people want to marry black people. There are some people like me, like Mr. J.D. Vance, who actually fall in love with different races. It happens, but that should be actually a personal choice. When we say that all races are equal, I believe that's the base of everything. But you cannot tell somebody, well, you have to like that kind of race. You have to marry that kind of race. You have to impose it on you. That's not how it works.
And how he wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat, you said. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant. No Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare. And you also shared another story about your family and restaurants. Said before me and my sister were born, my family had a saying about Olive Garden that contains the N-word that we're not allowed to say. So my question, based on that anecdote that you say on your own podcast, is do you think you grew up in a racist environment, that your father was inherently racist, and that thought process moved to you?
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents are.
You told the story.
And I will. And I'll
I'm not trying
them.
to ambush you. As I said at the start, Nick, to be clear.
No, it's not an ambush.
Nick, to be clear,
I think
I'm not
understands.
ambushing you. I'm literally.
That is an ambush, guys. I believe it is an ambush. But I also believe it's a rightful ambush. Mr. Nick put that on his show. He said, that's what my father. So just explain it. Just say what's going on. Just say, here's why he said that. And actually, he's going to explain it a little bit when he's going to mention that they used to own shooting club, actually, where they used to have many clients that were black. He's going to say that my best friends are black. This is the defense of everybody here in America. When you tell them, hey, you're racist. No, I have black friends. This issue, unfortunately, it's kind of only in America from what I noticed. As you guys know, I'm a descendant of from Morocco originally. When I came to the United States, I remember in my first week, I called my friend in Morocco, and guess what I told him? I told him, hey, man, guess what? You are black. He was like, what? What you saying? I'm like, you are black, man. We never talked about that. And he started laughing and cracking. He was like, he's like, what brought it to your attention now? I'm like, man, when I came to America, everybody's talking black, white, black, white. I mean, there's like a lot of division. And I can see here that there's cause probably because on the 1960s, segregation was still here in America. It's a big issue. Somebody's grandfather went through that, and they tell their grandkids what they went through. So there is that bitterness inside. It's kind of a legit bitterness, but it's also some bitterness that we have to overcome because that bitterness is so many issues, so many conflicts happened in history. We have to move on. We have to get up strong, and now everybody is equal. That's what matters.
Reading an anecdote that you revealed on your podcast. It's you that's put it in the public domain.
I know.
I'm simply asking you whether my assessment of that, which is that your father didn't want to take you to certain restaurants because of what you refer to as they were commonly known as black fare, whether that attitude to African Americans in that instance permeated to you. It's a reasonable question.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think everybody knows what that is, but I'll address it. I'll engage with it, and I'll defend my father from the charge of racism.
Sure.
No, my parents are not racist, and they've never been racist. I'll tell you about my parents. They used to have a school in Chicago in the South Loop where they instructed people on how to shoot firearms. It was a security school, and most of the clients were black. And I believe actually one of their clients was Larry Hoover's son at one point, sort of a funny story. And so most of their clients would come in from the South side of Chicago. My grandmother, she grew up in the projects in the city. And so my family being in Chicago, being ethnics, being Italian, Irish, Mexican in the West Side on Taylor Street, all over the city. My family for many generations have lived near and around black people. And look, my views about black people and their views about black people are shaped with experiences with black people. And what they will tell you, what my parents would say if they were here, is that for many, many years, the older generations of black people were very respectful, very humble, very decent. In fact, my grandma used to have an anecdote. She grew up in a lot of dysfunction. Her mother was mentally ill, and they would be having dinner in the projects, and there'd be so much chaos and dysfunction and disagreement and fighting. And she would look across the way out the window at a black family in the other apartment, and they'd be holding hands around the table saying grace. And this is sort of the culture that used to prevail. But now what you have in the city is that there's no accountability for the black people. And now Chicago has become a complete dump because these teenagers go out and they take over the city. They call them teen takeovers. That's the euphemism for it. They're teenagers, but they all come from the same neighborhood. They drive up there and they mug people and attack people, and they destroy cars and destroy shops. We had the Festival of Lights a couple of weeks ago. It's supposed to be a family event, and they light up the trees, and they, there's a big parade. I was in the parade one year, and you had a bunch of black people there shooting each other. 7 people shot, a 14-year-old killed in the Magnificent Mile. And I know there's a lot of black people that feel the same way about this. They say, we've lost control of the city and we're looking for accountability. We have a lot of black people that are always outraged about racism, outraged about attitudes from white people, but they're never ashamed of some of these behaviors, never ashamed of some of the things that go on. And that's why I think there's a lot of negative attitudes these days. And so you know, again, I think those attitudes, you say I'm a product of my environment. I am. And so are my parents and my grandparents. Unlike you, because you're not even American, in Chicago, we have to live in a big, diverse city where there's a lot of different kinds of people. And I think anybody.
This one he got it wrong because Mr. Piers Morgan is from London. London is one of the most diverse cities in the world.
Chicago tell you the same.
I live in London. It's one of the biggest and most diverse cities in the world.
But it's not the same.
Well, actually, it's a big, diverse city. The only difference is we don't have the gun violence because we don't have guns. That's a whole different story. I don't want to get into that with you. I have got into that before in America.
You got a knife problem. You got sword problems.
We have problems with
Aladdin.
We have problems with violent crime. I make no pretense of it. So the idea that somehow I'm cosseted in London because I'm not in Chicago.
I didn't say that.
Well, you kind of implied it. But I guess my point about the environment, I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. I'm saying most people are in some capacity. When I read that anecdote, which just to remind you, it's not something I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said that
you said this. We're looping. You said this already.
But you haven't really directly, I think, responded to it, which is whether your father would not take you to certain restaurant chains because he associated them with Black Americans. Is that true?
No. Well. See here, if you're in America, you would say that Olive Garden is not real Italian food. Applebee's, TGI Fridays, this stuff is a load of crap. My dad was just a food snob, but no, it's got nothing to do with that. My best friend in first grade was a Black guy. We're not a racist family. So
okay. So when you told the story, I'm just curious. So
same justification that we all have to go through. My friend is a Black, so I'm not a racist. I went through this personally, actually, before I was in my job, where I was accused of being a racist. And this reminded me of an episode of Martin. If you watch Martin Lawrence, he has this very, very funny episode where basically he's going to get a ticket from this white policeman. And then Martin is going to tell him, hey, you're racist. Why are you giving me a ticket? You give me a ticket because I'm Black. And they both go to court. And when they go to court, the policeman actually, he brings his wife to court. And guess what? His wife is Black. So he tells the judge, Your Honor, my wife is Black. And this gentleman is accusing me of being racist. This is the same thing that happened to me, actually. I used to have a Black wife in the past. And somebody at work, they accused me of being a racist. And I had to show them, actually, that, hey, I fell in love with a Black woman. How can I be a racist with Black people if I fell in love personally with a Black woman? Sorry, my wife right now, but I just have to explain this point of view.
When you told that anecdote, which clearly on the face of it is racist, right? You're basically saying your father made racist decisions about where you would go as a family to eat. Are you saying, well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you saying that when you told that story, you didn't mean to infer that he was racist? And do you understand why when somebody like me reads that anecdote for the first time, as I did this week, I reach a different conclusion?
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is a sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father didn't eat at Olive Garden because he said that's not real Italian food. Hang on, can I? What's with the interruption?
That's exactly what Piers Morgan is doing. He's setting him up. He's trying to say, hey, you are a product of a racist house. That's why you grow up to be a racist. But Nick is too smart to fall in that.
Can I
I'm literally reminding you of something you said on your show, which led me to conclude a certain thing. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Yeah, it was said in jest as a humorous anecdote, and now you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is his parents are racist. He comes from a long line of racists. And I think everybody knows my parents are boomers. And these people come, well, you're a boomer, I guess, too, in a way,
60.
right? You were born in
60.
19? Yeah, so you're a boomer also. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer. I suppose it's sort of on the cusp. But it's a humorous anecdote. These are kind of the attitudes of baby boomers in society, but you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is you're a product of your environment. Your dad's racist because of this joke. Now you're a racist. And I don't think that's a fair characterization.
Okay. People can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it. I mean, the beauty of what I'm going to talk to you about in this interview is that almost all of it is just going to be reminding you what you have said and asking you what you meant. Your position about that story is that it was a joke.
So as you can see here, Mr. Piers Morgan confessed that this interview is going to be about reminding him of what he said. That's what the whole interview is about. It's not about making the points on this big issues that we have right now. There's big wars, there's big internal issues as far as how we're going to get the prices down, the grocery prices down, the health care, immigration, all these issues that we have to talk about. No, we're just talking about you, Nick Fuentes. You said that. Did you mean it or not? And Piers Morgan is going to be very disappointed because he's not going to get the answer that he wanted. Nick Fuentes is going to tell him, yeah, I mentioned that's what I said. Yes, I mentioned that's what I said. So far, punch after punch, Nick Fuentes is doing like this. Oh, yeah, boom, back. Oh, yeah, boom, black.
Okay. I want to come to something else you said. This is where you talk about Jews, women, and blacks. Let's just take a listen.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it fucking isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
So here, Piers Morgan is prepared and he's showing him this clip. He's thinking that Nick Fuentes is going to be stuttering, who's going to be like, oh, no, sorry, that's not what I meant. Actually, what I meant is this and that. But see, you're going to see what is going to happen right now. It's kind of funny.
And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Okay. Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
That's all true. That's 100% true. Everything I said in that clip is true.
Including that blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Yeah. Yes.
But all of them?
No, for the most part.
What does the most part mean? What percentage of American blacks would you like to see in prison?
Whatever the percentages of the murderers. I think it's 1 in 20 black men will commit a murder in their lifetime. So maybe let's say that 5%.
Oh, so you're talking about black people who murder people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So Piers Morgan is trying again, is trying to put a bait here, and he's saying, oh, you're really attacking black people? You want black people to go to jail? But Nick Fuentes is explaining, I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about crimes. We're not talking about that. Then now they're going to get into statistics. And I don't know, honestly, if they are playing. I'm not going to go. I don't like to use terms, honestly, and I don't like to use curse words because I believe that using curse words and insults, it's a sign of a weak character. Only weak people use insults and the loud voice. So we're going to keep it classy. I think it's better that way. I was almost tempted to say something here. I'm not.
But you didn't say that.
That's
you just said
problem.
blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. You didn't clarify that you were talking about black murderers.
Right. No, you're right. That's a good addition to that. That's a great point.
You think it's funny or?
Yeah, I do. I think it's hilarious. I think it's totally true.
Do you think a black American would find it funny? You think that blacks should be imprisoned for the most part?
Blacks are my biggest fans. I get high fives all the time. They say, Nick Fuentes, I love your show. They agree with me. And you want to know why? Here's the difference. Black people are the most victimized by other black people. You think black people want to live in the hood and the ghetto and get shot all the time? That's what happens in the south side of Chicago.
So I believe this is what Nick Fuentes is trying to differentiate with. He's trying to say that black neighborhoods, they have higher crime rate. Black schools, they have a lot of shootings around the school and inside the school. That's why he doesn't want to be around black people. Not that he doesn't like black people. He has black friends, but he's going to mention now he doesn't want to live around black people anymore. I don't mind. I love black people. Like I told you, my wife used to be black.
You should come here. I'll take you there. We could go to Garfield Park.
My son went to Chicago
Inglewood.
University for a year, actually, several years ago.
Yeah, that's a bubble. That's a bubble. You think you're in Chicago and Hyde Park? You don't know Chicago. Go a little bit west, see what it's like over there. And I'll tell you, black people agree with me because they're tired of it too. And maybe not most of them, but a lot of them agree with what I say about that because they know how it is. That's why the first
black people, they don't want crime either. Who want that?
thing they do when they make a little bit of money is they go and leave to another neighborhood.
Okay, so what was this remind me?
Again, this is a different subject that we're talking about. We're talking about the violence, why black people have more violent crimes than white people. We need to go back to history here. We need to have some academics about it because it's not just because they are violent. It's a products of many things that happened in the past, the products of the oppression that they've been through in the past, the products of the slavery, the products of the segregation. And as we mentioned, the segregation has been in the United States until, I believe, the 1960s. Imagine, it's not that far ago. So blacks have been oppressed, and that's why there is this kind of socio-economic crisis. They're not the rich people here. They are not the well-educated people here. Of course, we find many of them that reach the top of the top, and that's why I'm very happy that Mr. Obama was president. Then I told all my black friends, guys, you have no more excuse. You cannot tell me that there is an oppression anymore. There is a black president, and that's it. You cannot say, oh, no, we've been oppressed because we're black. No, you're not oppressed. This is America. We had a black president. No more excuse.
Again, the percentage of black men who commit murder in America, what was the percentage you gave me?
It's 1 in 20. 1 in 20.
It's 1 in 100.
No, it's 1 in 20.
No. Less than 1 in 100 black US men commit murder. That's the most up-to-date crime statistics in America.
That's not true. I've seen other statistics. They say 1 in 20 will eventually commit a murder.
So your rate means that you're saying that 5 times.
So this argument right here, it's pointless, because what Nick Fuentes is saying is that there are more black people that commit crimes, violent crimes. It's known. There's nothing to. I mean, go to jails and see the percentage of the prisoners over there that are from one race to another. Then you will understand. It's very obvious. So I don't know what Mr. Piers Morgan is trying to go around it. School shootings, this and that. I mean, it's very obvious.
There's as many black men.
¿Qué pasa, Mr. Morgan?
Commit murder as the official crime statistics say.
Yeah, there's a report, I believe, on X by Data Hazard. I'll have to go and double check that for you. But yes, there's some pretty shocking evidence that says that it's far more alarming than you would think.
Okay, but you would accept that the official crime statistics are 1 in 100, or you wouldn't accept that statistic?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen other evidence. Like I said, Data Hazard on X, I believe, produced a report about a year ago. It said 1 in 20. But I mean, whether it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100, that's a lot of people, Piers. I mean,
sure,
this is
a lot of white
problem.
people commit murder too. Well, they do, don't they?
Okay, but it's about proportionality. I mean, white people are 65% of the population. Blacks are 13%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anybody would tell you that more black people proportionally commit violent crime than white people. And people vote with their feet. People would rather pay a much higher property tax.
Most mass shootings.
What's with the interruptions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, you look at in Chicago, in New York, these neighborhoods are so stratified.
Look at Mr. Piers Morgan face here. Finally, you got somebody who can stop those interruptions, because Mr. Piers, if he start interrupting you and you don't stand up for yourself, believe me, it's like a snowball. So I'm glad Nick make that stand for himself.
People would rather pay a high tax rate. They'd rather pay a much higher property value to live in a less diverse, less black neighborhood, because they don't want to live around the violence. And I think that when you look at even on the public transit, the subway, the blue line, you know, people don't want to go there because they know who occupies and menaces the public transit. It is these people like Daniel Penny had to deal with. It's people like Irina Zarutska had to deal with. And that's just the uncomfortable reality.
You've also said you don't want to live near black people. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
I mean, it couldn't be clearer, really. Unless you want to say that's another of your jokes, but you're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist. I think everybody, the only people that aren't racist or pretend not to be are white people to their detriment. Everybody else is racist.
But earlier in the interview, you really got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically sure.
Yeah, because
he's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist. You're right. So maybe everybody. The difference is you're attacking my father. You know, he could get fired from his job.
I'm not attacking your father.
You are.
No, I'm not. I don't know your father. And to be clear, I have no knowledge about him at all
Well, then let's leave him out of it. Let's leave him out of it if you don't know him.
Hang on, Nick. You put that story into the public domain on your show. I'm simply reminding you of what you told everybody, millions of people, about your father. If you now want to retract it, fine. If you want to say it was a joke, which is...
On this one, I am with Piers because Nick Fuentes put that statement in his show, so he needs to defend it. That's the bottom line. And there is not much to talk about. Just say, no, they're not racist. You did say it earlier, but just explain why you don't want to go to Applebee's or Olive Garden. I think the explanation that could have been stated here is associating the restaurant with the highest possibility of crimes, the highest possibility of chaos. When you go to restaurants that are Black dominated, there is a high chance you're going to hear loud noises, loud voices, arguments. Sometimes there will be even shootings. That is a reality. And I believe that is what Mr. Nick Fuentes is saying. That's why his father didn't want to take them to Applebee's and so on. If they're saying that we have Black friends, if we're saying that we do socialize with Black people, but he did say also that he doesn't want to live next to Black people. So this is where it goes. Is this a race thing or is this a preference thing? Because if you have everybody is equal, Black, white, yellow, red, but there are preferences. That's the difference.
What your position was earlier, fine. But I'm allowed to put to you things you've said publicly. That's not unfair. That's not me targeting your father. You put that story about him out
You know
there.
what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
I'm asking you about a pretty shocking anecdote, which to me looked like you were saying your father made decisions about where you as a family would eat based on skin color of people who worked at these places. If you say, or use them, if you say that is not what you meant, that's fine. You can respond any way you like. But the idea I can't ask you about it without you saying I'm attacking your father is ridiculous.
Well, you are, and you know what you're doing. And there's a political culture in America where if you have the wrong views, you get fired from your job. And my father has a job. And if you go on here and say, you charge him with racism or something, and I'm put in a position where I don't look like I'm sticking to my guns if I don't say my father's a racist, you're putting him in jeopardy, and he's not here to defend himself or explain his views. And it's very low, and I think you know exactly what you're doing, and people can see what you're doing. I'll defend my views, and I think that, so let's leave him out of it. Let's just not talk about my father because my father isn't here. I'm here.
Okay, well, then do you accept that you shouldn't talk?
Okay,
listen, that's fine. But then do you accept you shouldn't talk about your father on your show? And you shouldn't tell...
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not. So
not.
it's fine for you to put a story out there which would make most people who listened to that story or watched it at the time on your show conclude that he was racist. It's fine for you to do that. But if I then ask you about it, I'm the one who's being unfair and I've crossed a line. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're being malicious.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, people are watching this live. They can draw their own conclusions about whether what I just did.
And they will.
Yeah, and I'm sure afterwards, by the way, you'll say, he ambushed me with your own words. With your own words.
That's a little presumptuous.
By the way, guys, people did draw their own conclusions, and I will say 90% of the comments were in favor of Mr. Nick Fuentes. Sorry, Mr. Piers Morgan, you lost this battle. There's nothing you can do about it.
I'm not going to say it's an ambush, but I think that's a low blow. And I think you know what you're doing, and that's fine. You're a tabloid journalist. I expected that. I don't think it's an ambush because I knew it would be like this. And people will see what you're doing, and I think they'll say it's low. But as far as you want to talk about racism,
I do.
Let's talk about racism. Let's leave my dad out of it.
Look, you've admitted you're a racist, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Own it.
Okay, that's fine. You're perfectly entitled in a free democratic society to stare down the barrel of his camera and tell me you're a racist. People can judge you accordingly. Many people who have assumed that you're racist will now have heard it from your own lips. That's fine.
There you go.
That's the point. The point of this interview.
Here's the difference, guys, between being in the United States and being somewhere else. When you are in the United States, the Constitution guarantees you that you can talk about anything you want. You can say anything you want. Even hate speech is accepted, except when you are insinuating violence. You cannot say hey, let's go after this kind of race or that kind of race. You cannot say, hey, I hate this person, so they deserve to be hurt. That we cannot say. Unfortunately, right now, if you go to the UK, as a matter of fact, I believe this year, was a record of the arrests associated of freedom of speech. It's very sad what's going on in the UK. I mean, they need to amend their constitution. They need to do something here.
You is to go over the things you've said, which have led people to reach conclusions about you, and to ascertain whether those conclusions are fair and reasonable or not. That's it. So I want to play you another clip. This is what you talk about why white people are justified in being racist. Let's take a listen to this.
First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
You stand by that?
Absolutely.
So here he's talking about, again, about being secure, about safety. He's not talking about race. He's going to explain it here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
look at Mr. Piers Morgan's face. He did not expect this answer. Absolutely. Yes, that's what I said. It is what it is. Keep going. Poor Piers. I've never seen him like this before. I've seen many interviews of him, but this interview, I don't know if he was not prepared or whatever he did, his preparation was targeted to the person of Nick Fuentes, who was very much able to defend himself. He should have talked about the issues.
White people should go out of their way to avoid black people when they see them.
Absolutely. They would be wise.
Why?
Because it's a lose-lose proposition. If you're Irina Zarutska and you don't walk the other way, you get stabbed to death and you die.
That's the lady, I believe she was from Ukraine, that was stabbed in the bus just because she was white. She was stabbed by a black gentleman who was sitting behind her.
If you're somebody else and you walk on the subway and you stand near a black person or something, maybe it's fine. It's a lose-lose proposition. So no, I think that white people have been beaten into submission, that we're afraid to tell the truth about it. And the truth is that when you go into these major cities like New York or Chicago, I believe she was in North Carolina, there is a menace, which is young, black, adolescent men. They're extremely violent. And we have been told that we have to pretend like they are every other person. We have to be colorblind to that. And we're supposed to go and be in the midst of all this danger. And I think that at this point, it's gotten out of control. You look at the BLM movement, they said that the reason that black people, are violent, or the reason there's crime, is because of police brutality, or redlining, or all these other things. They said we need to get rid of the police. We need to defund them. And a lot of cities did. A lot of cities like Chicago, for example, the police changed the rules of engagement. They don't chase them. It's not a felony if you steal a certain amount of merchandise. They won't chase them on foot. And now the city's totally up for grabs. And now, whether you're in the Gold Coast or whether you're on the Mag Mile or you're in the worst neighborhoods in the city, you might get shot, you might get mugged, someone might run up on you. And I tell my followers, it is better to be perceived as racist or racist and walk the other way and maybe keep your life than to say, I'm a good anti-racist. I don't mind that this person's making me uncomfortable. Maybe he's looking a little froggy. I'm going to sit down because I'm a good person and get stabbed, mugged, whatever.
What do you think, guys? Can you please comment on that? Would you turn the blind eye on this issue of racism and just go ahead and sit in a risky situation next to a black person who looks shady, who look like they're about to commit a crime, not just because they're black, but just because of the environment? Sometimes those subway stations, for example, somebody who's dressed a certain way. Black people, if somebody's dressed really nice, if their teeth look white, if they're groomed, I don't think you're gonna really be concerned much. But if you see somebody that looks like a criminal, talks like a criminal, and walks like a criminal, so what would you do? Will you just say, hey, because I want to prove that I'm not racist, I'm just going to go sit right next to them? Or you're going to say, you know what, I don't care what they think about, but I'm going to be safe and go sit behind them. That way, if something happens, I can be alert. What would you do? Please let us know.
By the way, this is
what would you do?
Strategy. They call it the friendly stranger. There's a crew of them. They do this in Chicago. They stand outside bars. black people. They approach strangers. It's a robbery crew, and they pretend to be a friendly stranger, and then they mug them. And stupid white people say, oh, hi, yeah, nice to meet you. You know, they grin, they laugh, they put up with the nonsense, and then they get mugged, or worse. Sometimes they get executed. And so as a white person,
how do you feel about mass shootings at school?
I think they're bad.
Who do you think commits the vast majority of the mass shootings?
I'm sure it's white people.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
I think that white people do more antisocial violence. I think black people participate in more gang violence. I think that's
This interview is all going to be going about attacking Mr. Nick Fuentes. The one thing that I will say opposing Mr. Nick Fuentes is admiration of Hitler. He's going to ask him, why do you say that Hitler was cool? He's going to say, yeah, I think he's cool. I like the way they were doing the uniform, their marches, their this and this and that. I mean, come on, we have to be sensitive. Imagine somebody who has his grandparents that were incinerated in gas chambers by Hitler. Imagine if your grandparents were killed by Hitler. Would you say such a thing is cool? Come on. This is somebody who was responsible for millions of deaths. And now we're going to say he's cool? No, this is where we need to draw the red line, because you've been offensive to people. You've been offensive to all the descendants of the victims of the Holocaust. You cannot say that Hitler is cool. I think that is very wrong. And this is where we need to draw the red line, because yes, there is the freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean we're going to be hurting people just because we're free to say whatever you want. We have to take in consideration people's feelings. Again, put yourself in their shoes and imagine if something like this happened to you. What would you say about the person who was responsible for that? You will say that they are cool? No, come on. Come on, Mr. Nick. Yo, yo.